Last week, I was obscenely angry about the position I'm in and how it feels like I'm getting these job interviews, I'm applying to jobs, I'm talking to good people, I'm having good conversations, and I'm still working during all this time, but yet nothing is moving forward. I'm not progressing in any direction. It really feels like I'm just wasting my time. I have since calmed down and thought a little bit more about how I'm spending my time and realized maybe I'm not wasting my time. Maybe I'm not in such a bad spot after all. Despite being so down on myself, perhaps I'm maybe in the best position I could be in. Months ago, I had this predetermined goal for where I should be right now, and I refused to give up on it because I had this vision of going to school and then branching out beyond after school and leaving Indiana and finding a new place and rediscovering who Matthew Stein is and what life means to me. That hasn't quite panned out the way I had hoped. And I was angry about that. But it's okay. There have been many times in history where people have adventured out with a particular idea in mind or goal in mind and hopes with this trip that they're going to find new things and rediscover themselves, but ultimately it doesn't pan out the way they anticipated. I've come to realize it kind of just all depends on the filter in which you look at a given opportunity. Now, if you've seen me sitting here the past few days playing video games, you might argue, Matthew, what a waste of time. But I could argue it's just the start of a promising gaming career or a promising streaming career. Point being, it's all about the filter you look at things from. The filter is super important. Let's take, for example, the Terra expedition led by Robert Scott. At the time, the British government and the people of Britain viewed this as one of the most ambitious trips in the world. Scott was hoping to be the first party to reach the southern pole of Earth. They raised all of this public money and government grants and all of this millions of dollars to go on an expedition to make all sorts of discoveries across Antarctica and the South Pole. A group of 5 men led by Scott made their way to the South Pole, venturing up glaciers on this long, cold, dark trip to find out ultimately when they reached the South Pole that Norway had been there 34 days earlier than them. So the main goal of the trip there is flopped, but you're still in a place of scientific discovery. You still can make discoveries about the new land you're in. So let's bring back some rocks and develop those and research those and see if there's any discoveries made through those. Reality, the rocks they pulled from the South Pole were no different than any other rocks in the continent. They could have pulled them from much farther from the South Pole in a much more desirable area. Also, they sent 3 members of the group on a sort of side quest, if you will, to get emperor penguin eggs with hopes of finding evolution and having concrete evidence of evolution in hopes that the embryos would have teeth. The embryos didn't have teeth. They were just like every other penguin egg they had seen before. So after this trip to the South Pole, dragging these rocks back and these penguin eggs as well, all 5 members of the party died on the return to base camp, and ultimately they were viewed as tragic heroes, but as time's gone on, there have been some questions raised about their expedition, and it may have just been a waste of time. They set out with some concrete goals and some things that they knew they wanted to achieve. Reaching the South Pole first, finding fancy rocks, and looking at evolution with the emperor penguins. None of which panned out how they had planned. They weren't even first to reach the pole. So if you're from Norway, you would say the trip, utter waste of time, and we beat you, so what are you doing anyways? The Britons viewed it as a great thing at the time. The filter is very important. Now for another potentially catastrophic waste of time, Mansa Musa. You may have heard that name before because he is the richest man to have ever lived on Earth, richer than any person in the modern day, even Elon Musk, amassing an estimated net worth of 300 billion to 500 billion. Let me say that again, 500 billion. Unbelievable amount of money came from gold, jewelry, and riches just from all across the world. He was based in modern-day Mali, and he was also a devout Muslim. I believe it's a goal for every Muslim to make a journey to Mecca at least once in their life, and Mansa Musa was no different. It was a rather long trek back in the day for him, but regardless, he decided to make the journey from modern-day Mali across northern Africa, up and around and down to Mecca. Along the way, he decided to make it sort of a spiritual journey and be rather charitable and use his wealth to his advantage in some ways. Well, use his wealth to other people's advantage. He took with him tens of donkeys and camels and thousands of people in this large caravan that trekked across the deserts of Africa through major cities such as Cairo. Cairo is a very specific example of his rather charitableness and how generous he really was. It is said that as he was rolling through Cairo, he was throwing gold coins out left and right to any person who was on the street, any peasant, any shop owner, any person who was nearby. This on its face is an unbelievable selfless act. He was basically a one-man parade, giving away money along the way, not giving away candy or anything, but gold coins, cold hard cash, baby. The amount of money he left in Cairo is probably an unfathomable amount of money for a person to make in their life. And he was simply on a religious journey. While the original goal seemed beautiful and it seemed to be executed wonderfully, giving out riches to poor people and changing their lives, time didn't tell so well. The amount of gold that Mansa Musa gave away was enough to single-handedly decimate the economy of Cairo and drop the value of gold across the world by 25%. He dropped the value of gold by a quarter. The devastation and decimation of the economy in Cairo was so much so it lasted more than a decade. 12 years it took for the economy to recover. It was so bad that at one point Mansa Musa had to make the journey back to Cairo to retrieve some of the gold he had originally left to help restore not only the value of gold, but reinstate the economy within Cairo. A plan and journey that on its face before it happened seemed utterly and incredibly selfless. The most generous thing you could do ended up decimating the economy for over a decade in one of the biggest cities in the history of the world. Despite being so selfless and generous, some might say it was still even a waste of time. If you were to ask me several months ago where I would see myself in early August, I would tell you basically anywhere but Indianapolis. But here I am, still in Indianapolis. I have applied to numerous jobs since then. Maybe should have applied to more. I've had several interviews. I've even flown across the country to an interview to a state that I thought it was exactly where I wanted to go. Since then, I've realized maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. Maybe the predetermined goal I had made for myself was misguided. Maybe I was wrong. Perhaps it's possible that I'm in the best place that I need to be right now where I'm at already. Perhaps I'm already in the best place for me to be in this position in my life. Scott and the Britons hope to venture to the South Pole and be the first to ever reach the South Pole. But not only that, bring back rocks for scientific discovery and make new discoveries about the world and find out things that we had never known before. And also maybe find evidence of evolution within the penguins by hoping that their embryos would somehow have teeth and that they could help the world step forward. But ultimately, none of the things they set out to do, they were able to do. They weren't even the first to reach the goddamn pole. Norway did it not much more than a month before. And all of them died ultimately before they were even able to return. So one could say the whole trip was an utter waste of time despite the high-reaching goals before they left. Mansa Musa. He wanted to head to Mecca to reach the home of his religion, perhaps reach some sort of enlightenment or some sort of goal within his religion. And along the way, he was going to have some sort of drastic pilgrimage, giving away probably millions of dollars to people along the way. Little did he know that his trip would end up destroying the economy of Cairo and depleting the value of gold by 25%, a quarter. His selflessness and gifting and charity ultimately depleted and destroyed the economy of Cairo for a decade. So much so that he had to go back and take back the money that he so generously gave away. Mansa Musa set out with possibly the most selfless goal to give away as much money as possible along the way on some sort of religious journey. And even that didn't pan out as he had predetermined. Even that did not plan out how he had hoped. Despite giving away millions of dollars, it created problems for over a decade. Point being, I had these predetermined goals for where I should be right now at this point in my life. And I think I was wrong. That's not to say I should forget these goals and never think about them again, but it's okay to be where I'm at now. Despite having this predetermined goal for where I should be, where I'm at may provide me with possibly even better experience for where I thought I should be. The game of life is long. It takes a lot of time, and while it feels like everything I'm doing right now is the most important thing in my life, luckily, I have some time. And I don't have to be running to the next checkpoint always. It's okay to take my time and reach it patiently. that's what I'm going to do. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal is really just not to waste my time. Originally, I felt like the position I'm in was wasting my time, but I've since found out it might just be the best place for me to be. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Procrastinator Podcast. I've been your host, Matthew Stein. You have been fantastic as always. And I will see you in next week's episode of the Procrastinator Podcast for episode 104. 2-year anniversary of the podcast. Man, oh man. See ya.